In the next 4 videos in this series, we're going to take a look at how we can denoise within RX5 and RX5 Advanced. So we have here in the RX modules list, the denoise module. Now the denoise module is made up of 2 sections. We've got the spectral denoiser and the dialogue denoiser. We'll be taking a closer look at the dialogue denoiser in the 4th of these 4 videos. First, we're going to take a look at the spectral denoiser. And there are 2 elements to the spectral denoiser which are only available in RX5 Advanced. There is this adaptive mode, which will enable the spectral denoiser to adapt to the audio passing through it. And then we've also got these advanced settings, and these advanced settings are also only available in RX5 Advanced. But let's start with the basic manual spectral denoiser. Now, before we start getting into how we use the spectral denoiser, I just want to show you a couple of the settings. So the key one here is the quality setting. And there are 4 quality settings going from fast to best. I have to say that the best isn't necessarily D. It could be C. These are 4 different algorithms. Now, A is used for real-time processing. B can be used for real-time processing on very fast computers, but in essence, C and D are non-real-time, which is absolutely fine here in the standalone application. It's well worth having a listen, especially between C and D, to make sure that you're choosing the best algorithm for the audio that you're working on. Then we've got this artifact control. And in essence, this is a trade-off between 2 different side effects. So if we go towards the musical noise end of the control, then the spectral denoiser can better separate the noise from the wanted sound. But unfortunately, the downside is you're more likely to get artifacts like that sort of underwater burbling type sound. If you push it over towards the gating end, then this will use more wideband gating. But the downside of this is you'll tend to hear the noise coming up in the gaps between the wanted sound. Then there's this output noise only feature. You'll see this type of option in a number of the modules in RX5. And in essence, it enables you to hear what the module is going to be taking away. It's really useful to help you to make sure you're not taking too much away. It's also very useful for sound designers creating and extracting sounds for sound design work. So back to the denoiser. Now the first thing we need to do is to highlight a section of the noise. Now it should be clean noise if you can ever have such a thing. Essentially it needs to be a segment where you don't have any of the wanted sound. And then we can get it to learn that profile. So now what we've got here with this orange line is the noise profile in the particular piece of audio that we've got. Let me just play you this audio so you can hear it.
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
So you can see and hear that there's a lot of hiss in that particular recording. So now we've got our noise profile. What we can do is to use the preview option.
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
So you can hear that it's made an improvement, but we've still got some of the noise popping up in between the wanted sound, which is exactly what we would expect to happen because we've got the artifact control towards the gating end. So let's just play the same piece of audio with the output noise only option. So you can hear that the noise is coming up in the gaps but being shoved down during the wanted audio. Let's just turn that off. So the next thing I'm going to do is to push the noise reduction up to around 20 dB. And take the artifact control over towards around 2. So let's take a listen to that option.
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
So that's much, much better, but you can hear on my voice, you're starting to get some of the artifacts, a sort of slightly hollow, underwatery type sound. So what I'm going to do is take the artifact control back over to around 8, and then bring the noise reduction down to about 9. We'll just make sure that the noise profile is correct, so we'll just get that to relearn it. And let's take a listen to that.
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
And so what I'm now going to do is to process that, because one of the tips and tricks for denoising is to do a number of lighter passes rather than one heavyweight process. So now we've processed that first pass, we need to get the denoise module to relearn the new noise profile, because obviously we've taken some of the noise away. And then we can just get that to process that again. So this is a second pass. And you can see from the spectrogram, the noise has come down quite significantly. But the most important thing is, what does it sound like?
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
So you can hear that we've still got some gating issues. I could mess around with the artifact control, but what I want to show you is another way that we can adjust the settings in the spectral denoiser. So we'll go back to the original state. So in the undo queue down here, we'll go back to the initial state. We will relearn the noise profile. So we make sure we've got the right noise profile. And what I'm going to do now is to click on this link button underneath the reduction control. Click on that, and now you'll see what's happened is we've got two controls adjusting the amount of reduction for the noisy elements and the tonal elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the noisy reduction up to around 25, and I'm going to bring the tonal reduction down to about 4.5, because in this case, the things that we don't want are noise, but the things that we do want, my speech, has a lot of tonal elements. So by being able to split those controls and to reduce the noise of the noisy elements much more than the tonal elements, let's have a listen now and see how that sounds.
This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini-disc recorder.
So you can hear that's much, much better. So this option to be able to separate them for this particular example, which has a lot of hiss, which is broadband noise, and speech, which is tonal. When you've got that difference, then splitting the reduction curves is really, really useful. I'll see you again in another video.